The heat is on this week in the Senate, where members are facing one key question. Do you stand with your party or against it? At issue is whether the senators will vote to confirm Neil Gorsuch as the next Supreme Court justice, a lifetime term which could bring with it a lifetime change to the U.S. Senate.
When Gorsuch refused to answer the most rudimentary questions in the hearings, after there were many doubts about him to begin with, there was a seismic change in my caucus, and it's highly, highly unlikely that he'll get 60.
Neil Gorsuch will be confirmed this week. How that happens really depends on our Democratic friends.
Today, every Republican on the Senate committee voted to confirm Neil Gorsuch, and every Democrat voted against as the latter prepares for a filibuster, which Republicans have promised to answer with the so-called nuclear option. That's a change in the rules that would make it so that a simple majority of senators could confirm Gorsuch instead of the 60 required. Now, the caveat there is the simple majority would be all that's needed from now on for Supreme Court nominees, just as it is already for federal court nominees, lower court nominees, ever since 2013, when then Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid engineered that change. Among those signaling his opposition to Gorsuch today was Vermont Senator Patrick Leahy, who addressed the issue of the Senate's future head-on.
Now, I respect this institution as much as anyone, but I cannot vote solely to protect an institution when the rights of hardworking Americans are at risk. Because I fear that the Senate I would be defending no longer exists.
In short, it looks like there's a good chance that the idea of reaching across the aisle is about to become something we read about in history books. Is there any repair on the horizon? Could it be Donald Trump who ends up bridging the divide if health care reform comes back again? Joining me are Farai Chideya, who covered the presidential election for 538, is now a fellow at Harvard's Shorenstein Center. Farai, it's great to see you again. Steve Kerrigan is former CEO of the Democratic National Convention and president of Obama's inaugural committee, and he's a former candidate for lieutenant governor. He's president and co-founder of the Massachusetts Military Heroes Fund. I'm now done. Nice to see you, Steve. Nice. And former Republican State Senator Bob Hedlund, who is now mayor of Weymouth. Mayor, it's good to see you as well. Let me start with you, Farai, because we discussed this whole Democrats voting for Gorsuch or not, and I think, I don't want to mischaracterize, you agreed, this is the best that's going to come down the line from Donald Trump for them. But beyond, assuming this plays out as we believe, Democrats filibuster, McConnell and his associates lower the threshold to 50, does this have potential to trickle down and poison other potential areas where there could be collaboration? Because this is the big thing, the Supreme Court. Does it have that potential?
I don't know that you can poison this well anymore. I mean, the well is full to the top with poison. And so I don't think that it fundamentally affects partisanship, but I do think that the nuclear option is going to provide a, it makes 2018 even more significant and what happens in those elections if that's invoked. Because if the composition of the Senate is, strictly on a majority vote basis, that makes it even more strategic.
And isn't it your party's fault this even happens? Lindsey Graham said it, I think, pretty well. Republican senator from South Carolina, said this today.
You changed the rules for everything below the Supreme Court. You had a chance to grab power and you grabbed it. So when you complain about Garland, it's the arsonist complaining about the fire, as far as I'm concerned.
That's maybe a little rhetorical flourish, but that's fair, isn't it? What's good for the goose is good for the...
I thought when Harry Reid did it in 2013, it was a bad idea to do it then, because this is what happens when you're in power, you claim the power and hold on to it real tight. When you're out of power, you want to make sure that...
Do you worry, Farai says it can't get much worse, do you worry that it could get worse? I mean, this is the biggest of the Supreme Court justices, even though it's a conservative replacing a conservative. This is what it's all about. Doesn't this have potential to ruin any potential for collaboration?
I certainly hope not. I mean, what I think these Democratic senators are sort of putting in the calculus is, first of all, there is no benefit to them to supporting Donald Trump and his administration right now. All of his failures in the last couple of weeks, frankly, his entire term as President of the United States, has been nothing but to bolster those who oppose him. So there's no plus side for them to go with him on the Supreme Court, where all the progressives and even the moderates in the Democratic Party don't want him to succeed.
I'm going to give you a reason why I think the Democrats should have cut a deal, which he thinks there was no reason for. Democrats go to some moderate Republicans from your party and say, I'll cut you a deal. We'll vote for Gorsuch, no filibuster, if you promise that if there's another nominee to replace Bader Ginsburg or Kennedy or Breyer, which really matters, either liberal or tiebreakers, that you will not reduce the threshold to 50. Is that a deal? They could have cut that deal, couldn't they?
I just as an observer, I wondered why that hasn't been put out there. And you
get one, we get one.
Yeah, well, put it this way. Harry Reid, I mean, he put us on a slippery slope. We're on that slope now. I don't like it. I believe in that tradition. I think it wasn't that long ago when you needed 67 to break a filibuster.
Yeah.
I mean, so we've seen that, trend go in a direction that's bad for the institution. And to listen to Leahy, say that he cares about the institution, but is troubling. And
well, his defense, this is the big one. I'm not again. I think the Democrats laid the foundation for this, but this is the big one.
But unless that deal is cut with Mitch McConnell or whoever's in leadership, it doesn't matter what the rank and file other Republicans would agree to other rank and file Democrats.
They can cut their own individual deals.
They can, but unless the leader decides to bring it to the floor, nothing's going to happen.
Donald Trump says after the health care fiasco of 2 Fridays ago, Donald Trump, whom you did not support as a candidate,
I voted for him in November.
Well, okay, no, but I meant during the primary season. My apologies. He says he wanted to work with the Democrats, but the same guy who says he wants to work with the Democrats has not once had a one-on-one conversation with the Democratic leader, Chuck Schumer. Right. Paul Ryan says we don't want to work with the Democrats. The Democrats don't want to work with the Republicans. The only conciliatory thing is your guy Rand Paul actually played golf with Donald Trump this week.
After Trump's insulted him.
Exactly.
And after he said he's not going to talk to the Freedom Caucus.
But does anybody
want
to play ball with anybody? Or it seems to me that nobody really wants to work with anybody.
Look, I came out of an institution here in Massachusetts where, despite the fact I was in a very small minority,
Republican
we got along and we worked cooperatively. So I don't understand how people you go to work with every day can be this divided. I mean, we developed friendships across the aisle that led to productivity. And, I know he worked for Ted Kennedy, and we heard the stories, how he was always willing to work across the aisle. I grew up, watching Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill. I don't understand how it's so poisoned, how the well is so poisoned. I don't know how we correct it. I don't know how we fix it. Maybe a guy like Trump can be the guy to do that.
I mean, the Democrats clearly have no desire, as you said yourself before, to work with him on anything.
I do not think that he can be the one to bridge it. But I will say this about the Republicans' now desire to make sure that we're working across the aisle to get something done. Merrick Garland couldn't get a hearing. Exactly. They wouldn't meet with him. A person who, by the way, I think Orrin Hatch said, God, if they nominated someone like Merrick Garland, we'd be
he did say that before he was nominated. Exactly.
And then they shut him down.
Yeah, but it's one of these things.
So they want us now to work across the aisle, but they didn't do it.
Even if I agree
this is why we're never going to get it done.
Exactly. How many years are we going to hear we can't work with the Republicans because Merrick Garland back in 20? Yeah, I mean this sincerely.
Or the Republicans point to Bork.
I think that there is a fair question of protocol, not just about Merrick Garland and what happened there, but also apparently with the Gorsuch nomination, he has not always been forthcoming in answering questions. So it's not just about, I actually thought that the Democrats should have brokered a deal at first, but when I learned that there was not a clarity in the conversations that you need to vet a Supreme Court justice. I mean, I'm not saying he's a bad nominee, but I don't think he stepped up to the plate with as much disclosure as he could.
Let's talk about one other person who's in the middle of this whole thing, a guy who didn't vote for Donald Trump, even though he's a Republican, Charlie Baker. Charlie Baker gets nominated to this Trump-appointed panel on opioids. I would argue an issue the governor cares about as much as practically anybody. He's worked across the aisle with people like the Democratic Attorney General. Here's what a Democratic Congresswoman had to say. Catherine Clark, I don't think Massachusetts families will appreciate Governor Baker's involvement if this turns out to be another of Trump's charades. To which I say, if it's another charade, then Baker should walk away. Should Baker not walk in the door?
Of course he should.
Because he doesn't like Donald Trump's policies?
Look,
This is how bad this is.
No, I agree. 6 or 7 people in this Commonwealth today will die from an opioid-related issue.
91 a day in America.
Yeah, I mean, it's a staggering thing. The issue is for Charlie Baker is to make sure that when he goes into that room, that he talks about the real issues and the solutions.
But she doesn't even want him to go in the room to begin with.
And I disagree with that.
Do you think?
I think work
go
doing
ahead,
that
Troy.
makes.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page. I think he should join this commission. However, this is where the pain point comes. Everett, Washington is a town that's actually suing Purdue Pharma, which produces OxyContin, saying that you knew that you were a pill mill, you didn't stop illegal distribution and redistribution of pills. And so there's a question of, will this commission really deal with a company that made $31 billion and addicted?
I agree. It's up in the air.
But that's the kind of question that's going to
So the question is not should he walk in the door, but what happens when he does walk in. Do you disagree with that or no?
No, I
You think he shouldn't be there?
He absolutely should be there and lend his voice to something that he cares about. And to say I'm not going to work with someone for political reasons or whatever reasoning that the congresswoman gave is outrageous. To politicize this issue, and you know, it's something that we struggle with in Weymouth in a huge way. I think that was just an example of what we were talking about on the previous topic, where it's so poisoned in Washington that you even have to be divisive and toxic, for lack of a better word, on an issue like that.
I will say this: you should be very careful. The governor should be on working there, because we learn the closer you get to Donald Trump, the blast zone could really have an effect on you, and he doesn't want to take any of that stuff home for 2018.
Friday, nice to see you as
Great
always.
to see you, Jim.
You as well, Steve,
see you.
and you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good to see you.